And now for our next session, I welcome onto the stage I think it's going to be a fireside chat, John Langoulant, who is the Agent General for Western Australia. Very nice to meet you, sir.
Thank you too.
Let's start with the basics. Agent General, I mean, it's an old title, I think more than 130 years old. What does it mean?
It's a great title, isn't it?
Yeah.
Doesn't come with the Aston Martin, unfortunately. So in 1892, the first Agent General for Western Australia was here. We represent our state, so Australia, those of you who know Australia, is made up of 6 states and 2 territories. All of the states have been, at one stage or another, represented here through an Agent General. My role is basically to promote Western Australia across everything we do, in the footprint of the United Kingdom, all of Europe and Israel. So it's a fair footprint. And we do it primarily with a big focus on investment, trying to attract new investment into Western Australia, and trade. Trade into Western Australia, and those in Western Australia who want to trade into the broader world, beyond Asia, because most of our demand comes from Asia. We look to those opportunities, how do we open up new markets? And it's interesting that in recent times, particularly over the last 2 years or so, this part of the world is really reaching out to diversify supply chains. So the interest we're getting from not only the United Kingdom, Europe in particular, they want to come down and see us. They want to see what we can do, what we can provide. And in energy and the transition on energy, it's pretty attractive.
I mean, that brings us to Western Australia, enormous landmass, pretty hot landmass by and large, but also with a large and a great seaboard. So in this area that we're talking about, hydrogen for life,
Yep.
What has Western Australia got to offer?
2.5 million square kilometres of space, 10 times the United Kingdom, 12,500 kilometres of coastline, a wind that blows across that coastline and anywhere into 40 to 50 kilometres inland, pretty well consistently. The highest level of solar radiation in the north of the state of anywhere in the world. So a capability to generate enormous quantities of renewable energy. And there are a wide range of projects now in planning for the development of that renewable energy, and all of that renewable energy, particularly in the remote areas of the state, and you can imagine there are large remote areas in 2.5 million square kilometres, will be exported. A small component will be used for domestic production. The largest component will be exported.
I mean, you're going for what, 12% of the global market? That's your target.
And how did we get to 12%? Well, we currently export 12% of the world's LNG. And we've been doing that since the late 1970s. And we will continue to do it for the next probably 30 odd years as gas continues to be that great transition fuel as we transition the world to renewable energy. So we've set ourselves a target that we want to continue to play in this energy space. It's been a very useful, beneficial industry for us up to now, generated a lot of jobs, produced a lot of income, and we see the transition into alternative fuel sources, particularly hydrogen, as a component of that, so 12%. But it's not only hydrogen, Adam. We've got half of the world's lithium. We've got all of the critical metals in significant supply, together with 40% of the world's iron ore, which we currently export, about 60% of the world's gold, 12% of the world's LNG. Those critical metals, the manganese, the copper, the alumina, go to supporting the renewable energy sector and go into the development of batteries. And those components will be a complement to what we do with hydrogen.
But as far as locally, clearly production of them through mining and us cuts across any hope of getting towards some kind of net zero in Western Australia.
Well, we've got an objective of net zero by 2050. We've got an iron ore. We've got a coal industry, which has been the most significant source of our domestic electricity. We're shutting that in 2030. We're pretty well phased out of it now. So there's a determination to really improve emission output of this jurisdiction. Carbon capture is a large part of what we do. We've got a major gas project, the Gorgon gas project in the northwest, which is managing its carbon output by injecting it back into the subsea areas. So we have a determination to be at zero emissions by 2050, together with the continuing mining and gas industries while we transition into renewable energy as well. And we've achieved all of these objectives in the past.
And hydrogen, usage of hydrogen that you generate within those industries, is that part of the plan?
Yeah, absolutely. The mining industry has really seized this as being a key component of its social license. I mean, how does a mining industry keep having credibility in the world? You need a social license. And the social license that they've identified is, how do we get to zero emissions in our production processes? Our iron ore industry, which is probably one of the larger users and emitters, are all working towards converting their production processes. So just as we heard from Bosch, all of the heavy equipment that gets used, all the railway systems that are used, converting those to both hydrogen fuel cells and battery fuel cells power generation, getting away from diesel, absolutely getting away from diesel. Not only will it create enormous environmental benefits for the community, but we think it'll create significant economic benefits because the product we produce will be more accepted as a consequence.
And within this plan to become a massive producer of hydrogen, how specifically are you going to do it?
Well, we've identified 3 major centres across the state. I mean, most countries which are looking at the development of hydrogen are doing it through what we call hydrogen hubs. We've developed 3 hydrogen hubs, one in the north, where that very high level of irradiation I mentioned earlier for solar and wind is so rich, one in the mid-west of our state and one just south of the major population centre of Perth. And we have basically reached out to the world and said, who wants to come and establish hydrogen projects in each of those hubs? In the area in the middle of the state, we've got 4,500 square kilometres of land owned by the state, which we have said to, through an expression of interest process, we've said to 6 proponents, one of which is BP, but there are others of equal size. Give us your plans about how you will develop a hydrogen plant on that land. And our expectation is we will have a number of hydrogen projects on that land developed by private industry. Government will provide common use infrastructure, as we have always done across our mining industry. But the largest investment will come from the private sector. And we are very, very optimistic that this will come to reality, primarily because of the interest we're getting from world-class industry now.
You mentioned BP as a partner. What are the partners you're looking for?
Well, we've got Woodside. Woodside is a West Australian company. It's in the top 5 petroleum companies of the world. It's looking at developing a hydrogen project in Kwinana, which is the project south of our major population centre. Intercontinental is another project, another developer who started what we call the Asian Hydrogen Hub to the north, which BP has now taken a significant equity interest in and is the managing partner of that project. And there's a range of others across that whole state.
And what about partners from China or Russia or elsewhere? Are they welcome?
Not many Russians, I have to say. Look, most of the investment is coming from sources beyond China. It's phenomenal the amount of investment that is coming out of, or expectation that is coming out of Europe. So we have got a study being conducted by the Dutch government and the German government together with our government to develop a major export hub out of that area in the midwest of the state, where I said there's 4,500 square kilometres of land which is under development. So the Port of Rotterdam has an MOU with us. The Port of Rotterdam has taken a significant interest in Australia as an alternative provider of hydrogen. An MOU with us, working collaboratively with us to develop an export potential out of that site. Now that, we haven't seen that before. The number of German companies, both engineering companies and others, who are now coming to Western Australia to look at our potential, led by ministers out of Germany, we have not seen before. The shift in emphasis in terms of the mix of energy that is now being needed across Europe is generating this demand for what alternative sites can they look at.
And I mean, from the rest of the world, Western Australia is quite a long way away. So how do you envisage this exporting being done?
It's not that far. You can get a direct flight from Heathrow to Perth, Adam. It only takes you 16 hours, but it's a terrific flight, ladies and gentlemen. You should try it. It'll take 2 months to take a shipload of hydrogen from Perth to the Port of Rotterdam. But we've sent LNG from Perth to Korea to Japan to China. We've been sending that LNG since the late 1970s. Now that takes almost a month. So what we will have to establish, just as we had to establish with the LNG market, is a fleet of ships. And once the supply chain is in place, the fleet of ships sail.
But there are some technological challenges, aren't there, too?
Oh yes, yeah. You won't export pure hydrogen. You'll be ammonia. You'll be exporting, but there are those challenges. But I think the world is up for those challenges.
And that will be answered by Australians or by the whole world coming up with the ship?
I think it'll be answered by the whole world, just as the introduction of LNG into the world was answered by the world. I mean, LNG and the introduction of LNG back in the 60s and 70s was one of the great shifts in terms of the generation of electricity across the world. Here's another one. And I think, the world, in terms of our ingenuity, our technological capability, and our desire, an increasing desire to see alternative sources of supply, will see this industry develop.
Of course, if you're using ammonia, it's less net zero, isn't it?
Yes, well, it is, but to the extent that we're generating it off pure renewable energy, it's better than gas-based hydrogen, for instance. Equally, though, I can see blue hydrogen as being part of the transition. I mean, the world will transition. We're not just going to jump from where we are today to pure green hydrogen. There will be a transition as we work to green hydrogen. There has to be. There has to be a transition as we find the technology, as we reduce the cost of green hydrogen to make it attractive. There is industry across the world who will always bid on price. They'll always respond to price. So we have to find the technology that forces green hydrogen to be economically viable.
Thinking right, saying there have already been some exports to Japan, is that right?
There was an export out of Victoria,
one
of our sister states, and that was successful. It was a one-off export, but clearly the relationship which Australia and Western Australia in particular has had with the Asian countries around energy, they will be our major market. Let's not kid ourselves. The Asian markets will be our major market for energy. But we see a real prospect for the United Kingdom and Europe as being an alternative market for our product as well.
And that'll be the Asian markets, with China as the dominant market or not?
Well, China's significant at the moment. Japan's always been important. I mean, Japan, in terms of the investment we have out of Japan into Western Australia, leaves China's investment in the shade. And it continues to do that to today. So it's just not China. China's important to us. We sell a lot of iron ore, we sell a lot of gas to China, but we sell a lot of LNG and iron ore to Japan and Korea. And we've been doing it for a much longer time.
And you see the future of Western Australia as an exporter of resources, do you?
We are a trader. We are a raw trader. We're a population of 2.5 million people. We're not a big state. We put 2.5 million people in 2.5 million square kilometres. Quite often people say we've got more kangaroos in Western Australia than we have people. Could be true. But we have the capability. That's the point. We have the capability, we have the experience, we have the technology. I mean, we run the largest robot in the world, which is a 2-mile train carrying about $300 million worth of iron ore across a distance of 300 kilometres without a person on that train, managed out of Perth, 1,500 kilometres away. That's the technology that sits around the mining industry that we have and our LNG industry. That's why we have the confidence to say that we think the technology that's going to be required to move and transition into green hydrogen and other sources, particularly battery technology, we have it. So, we're quietly confident about this. If you're going to talk about what might get in the way of it, the thing which we will work very hard at is getting the right people to actually supply the hydrogen which will supply the world. Because we're a busy economy now, you need more.
Well, that's the right commercial partner you're talking about.
Yeah, the right commercial partner, but they'll select themselves. They always have in our state. The companies like BHP, Rio Tinto, and now FMG, which have developed our iron ore, Woodside, the Gorgon project in LNG, they're all international companies. And they've always wanted to come where the resource is. And we have, in the hydrogen sector, we've got the resource in terms of climate.
And the land ownership, that lies with the state or the companies that...
So the state, in terms of the Midwest, owns that land. So in terms of that, there will be long-term leases given on that land. In the north, the hydrogen hub in the north is based around the export ports of iron ore and LNG. So they'll have access to those ports through agreements with the state, and the same in Kwinana.
I mean, presumably for the solar, you're talking about enormous areas of land, yeah.
We, ladies and gentlemen, will see solar farms of 6,500 square kilometres. I mean, I was asking the other day, so what is that equivalent to in the United Kingdom? So about the size of Durham.
Durham County. Yeah.
Durham County, yep. So that will be the size of the solar plants we'll put through the state. These companies will put through the state. The Asian Hydrogen Hub I referred to earlier, which BP is managing, they are specifically targeting a 6,500 square kilometre solar farm.
And do you anticipate this is going to generate a lot of jobs, or is it basically a transition from hydrocarbons toward... Well, there will be new jobs, particularly around the construction of these plants. I mean, these are large investments, and it's not going to be done in 5 minutes. I mean, we're talking a transition through 2050 from where we sit today. So the generation of this new industry, while we sustain the existing industry of the mining industries which we have now, we see a significant increase in employment. I mean, we are a jurisdiction which seeks to attract people to come and live with us. We're small, we need skill. Many people want to come down and work in Western Australia. And as you say, it's going to require a long time frame for this to take place.
Sure.
Do you think that global business has the appetite for that kind of long-term investment?
I think they do, absolutely. What's the alternative, would be my question.
Well, the alternative is to play finance, isn't it?
Yeah, but the alternative is you have to transition. The world has to transition away from carbon-based energy into this fresh, renewable source of energy. So that transition, I think, is a given. I mean, I would say, is there anyone in the room who thinks we can't do it or we shouldn't do it? I don't think it's
not the same thing, though, are they?
I don't think it's... Well, I think...
Can and should.
Well, I think it is pretty much the same. I mean, we are doers. I mean, one of the things people often ask me, so what is it about Western Australia that is attractive? And my answer to people is not only the raw beauty of the place, but we are a can-do society. I mean, the fact that we now export 40% of the world's iron ore out of remote community, hot country, unhospitable country, but we do it every day of the week, indicates to us what we can do.
And so finally, where will, in terms of your earners from your natural resources, where's hydrogen going to be in the...
Well, this is a fascinating question about what is going to be the revenue that will come out of hydrogen, because it's all natural product. It's water, it's probably desalinated water, it's wind and it's sun. It's not like gas or iron ore, which is a depletable resource of which governments can charge royalty on. That's one of the questions which sits in the ether of how you develop this industry, about how is government going to recover a revenue from the generation of hydrogen. I don't have the answer for you, but it won't be through a royalty, I don't think. It'll be through a tax of some kind.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Langoulant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.